Welcome back to another episode. Another episode. So today we're creating this video to come to you guys about where we come from and how we got here today. So I'm gonna pass the voice over to Doña Yakiel first.
What up, y'all? I'm Yakiel. A little bit about me. Mainly, I was born in San Jose, but I only lived there for a really short time when I was a baby. And then we moved to Utah after that. Um, so I lived in Roy and Ogden um, and Park City, Jeremy Ranch um, for until I was about 9, or no, until about 8. And then I moved out to Southern California, where I lived in Orange County. And I spent most of my time in Southern California. And then in my adult life, I stayed around that area and ended up moving out to Humboldt about 7 years ago now. And that kind of brings me to where I'm at today. But, my family, most of my dad's side of the family is from Utah, from how I understand it. And my mom, her family is California. So I honestly haven't gotten too far into my ancestry. I haven't looked too deep into, my family tree. I do plan to, but, it's a lot of people to ask questions that sometimes are hard to get a hold of. So the main thing is I just know that my grandma on my dad's side, she was from Pennsylvania, and I think my grandpa was from out there too. Not 100% sure on that. But like I said, I grew up in Utah for a really early childhood, and Utah's a really cool area. A lot of outdoors things to do. There's all the seasons, snow, cold winters, hot summers. So I got a lot of exposure to outdoor sports, especially snowboarding. And I was pretty decent at snowboarding at a young age, and I was really into it. And kind of all board sports. It came to skateboarding, and my dad did want me to try surfing eventually once I moved out to Southern California, but for whatever reason, I wasn't that into surfing. I was more into boogie boarding, and that kind of made him mad. I don't know why. But I've always been a more active person, and I tried a lot of different sports. I tried baseball, soccer, basketball. Never did too much football. I did flag football in school a little bit, but what I really fell in love with was hockey. That was where most of my time went in my high school years. I played a lot of hockey. I ended up working at a hockey rink, teaching kids how to play, teaching adults how to play, and people of all ages with special needs. Taught them how to play as well. And that was my first job out of high school. And so I really enjoyed it because it was something I loved doing, which was hockey. But also I was learning all the skills of a first job with a lot more of a lax environment. It wasn't very corporate or anything, even though technically I was working for the Anaheim Ducks, which is corporate as fuck. But it was a really cool first job, and it opened me up to a whole world of people, all different walks of life. And at that point in my life throughout high school, I was going through a lot. Everyone is at that age, trying to find their identity and what their next steps are into adulthood. And I kind of just started to fry my brain for a good minute there. I got into drugs and just wasn't really focused or anything like that. And, I started to have some serious mental health problems going on. And hockey was one of those escapes for me. But unfortunately, some of the people in that crowd as well were going through similar things. And, misery loves company. So Around that time in my life when I graduated high school, I tried to go to community college and dropped out in 2 weeks. I just didn't feel it was for me at the time, and I kind of spiraled for a good minute, maybe like 5 years, just kind of had no direction. I had passions. I had a lot of free time, and in that free time, of course, I would waste a lot of it. Wasn't really appreciating how important life is, but at a certain point, I started to stumble into psychedelics, and that paired with my older sister, me and her always related more on a spiritual level. We talked about a lot of spiritual things, and the conversations that I've gotten into and started to dabble into psychedelics, I just wanted to explore a lot more, and eventually opened my mind up to a whole new world of thinking. And once I found that passion again, that drive, I started just digging deeper and eventually stumbled into mushrooms and psilocybin. And a funny thing is that a buddy of mine from elementary school that I hadn't heard of in a long time, because the last I heard he moved to Denmark. Like his mom kidnapped him, is what everyone said, and took him to Denmark. But in my adult life, I found out that she was escaping a domestic violence situation, and she took her son, and they left the country. And he learned a lot. He lived in an area where I guess they had no laws whatsoever. So he said it was a really interesting place to grow up as a kid, because people get into things, but it's not dangerous out there. And I was like, interesting. Okay. So his friend, his mom, happened to work for this volunteer group out in Orange County called Decrim Psilocybin. And I had ran into him through like Instagram or something like that, and I asked to see if he had acid, and he did. Got some, and after that he brought up his mom being into that group, and I was like, I would love to get involved, because at that time I just started learning how to grow, studying mycology. And a big part of why I fell into that, not only just dabbling with mushrooms, is also that I had seen the movie Fantastic Fungi with Paul Stamets in it, and it was really a powerful movie that opened me up to how important mushrooms are to our earth and to our biosphere, and not only to the earth, but how good they can be for our bodies. And psilocybin has the ability to rewire neurons in our brains, and like I said, I was frying my brain out quite a bit. So when I started to really see that side of the research and stop using it recreationally and got into the medicinal side of things, I started to really repair a lot of the damage I had done over the years through drugs and alcohol abuse. And at that point, I think I found my passion in life, and that was to really just learn everything about pharmacology, spirituality, mycology. I just went down all the rabbit holes I could, and especially moving up to Humboldt, which is a huge community out here for all of that. So, I started to go try and build my own business out of it, and it started to really take off at a certain point. And I think the coolest part about it to me was building the connections in the metaphorical way that mycelia does work. And, years go by, I stumbled upon Doña Liz here, and, she was friends with one of my neighbors a little bit, and or not, it was her neighbor, and I was friends with him, and I'd be hanging out with him all the time, and she'd come by, and one time she saw my homie who I was growing with at the time start talking about some mushroom stuff, and she said that he didn't really know what he was talking about. He didn't sound like, and he knew what he was talking about, but he didn't have the same passion I had for it. And so when I stepped into the conversation, she said she noticed right away that I was way more passionate about it. And that always stood out to me about something she told me, because I knew I had a passion, but I've never been the person to be the face. That other friend of mine, he was like a sales guy. Like, he would be in your face about it, have a good time. Like, he could build that rapport with charisma. I have charisma, but a lot of the time I hold back because I'm just a shy person. I'm pretty introverted. but I had a lot of more business ideas and creativity flowing. And, you know, hearing stuff like that was what kind of kept that spark going of my company, Divintuition, for a long time. And as of lately, it's just kind of been on the back burner. Life got real. Got 2 kids now, and you know they're always going to be a priority. So you know, I had to set that back a little bit. But during the process of building a family, again, Mycelia came back to that, and you know, Mycelia Familia is what I hope to become a really cool community of people who can all share wisdom with each other, you know, support each other in different ways, because shit's going down in the world. Doesn't matter where you are, if you're in the States or not. Everybody has something to go through. And I think we could all lean on people in our own communities at these times. And sometimes it's really hard to find your own community. The power of the internet these days is fucking crazy too. So, you know, I'm hoping that we can build a really cool community of people that are willing to share wisdom, and, you know, we all can focus on being able to be prepared for our futures. You know, not have to rely so much on the systems in place, not have to rely on the government so much, because they've kind of forced us into this corner with that. And especially if you are coming up from the bottom, it's that much harder to get up, you know. So a big portion of all the content that I would like to put out, and you know, I'm open to collaborating with other creators as well, is all going to be focused around, you know, really valuable things, valuable knowledge and wisdom that we can pass down, that has been passed down. You know, carpentry skills. I started dabbling into the trades just so I could learn everything that I could, so when it comes time, I can build my own home, you know. So all people, all walks of life are welcome. All we ask for respect, peace, and, you know, be willing to share. Don't gatekeep, because that's been a huge problem I've run into. Every rabbit hole I go down, at a certain point you realize everyone's gatekeeping all the truth, because the truth ain't free. You know, it is, you got to pay a cost, but that cost has been paid by us. We've paid the cost for all y'all. So now let's just fucking share the truth. Let's really be able to help lift each other up and support each other on this crazy ass journey called life. And that's about who I am, where I come from, where I stand today. You know, that's how I can sum it up. We could go down all the deep rabbit holes, but that's another video. And you'll see over time. I'm going to pass it over to Doña Liz now.
Alright. So, where I come from. I was born and raised in San Bernardino County. Shout out the 909 IE. Can't forget you guys. I have parents who are Mexican. My mom came from León, Guanajuato, and my dad came from Mazatlán, Sinaloa. They came to the States seeking the American dream. You know, getting a good job, getting a great partner, raise your family in a home and white picket fence. That was the American dream to us. And I just want to say shout out to my parents, because they did succeed that in their life. They met that goal. They raised us to the best of their abilities, and how much they survived in all their hardships in their life as Mexicans surviving in American society. My dad became an American citizen, and then that helped my mom become a resident because they got married. And, well, my siblings and I have 2 other siblings who are older than me. I'm the youngest of 3. And Well, we're all born here in California. Um, we were raised in Southern California, San Bernardino County, um, and out of my siblings and I, me and my middle brother have our bachelors. Um, my sibling has a computer science and something bachelor's. I'm sorry, don't mean to put your information out there, but I'm not using your name. um, but I got a bachelor's in child development and family studies. Um, the reason why I pursued that was for my oldest daughter. When I found out I was having her, I wanted to know more on how I can help myself and how I can help her in her development as a parent now that I'm becoming a parent. Because all I know is from how I was raised with my external family members. So, like, my aunt had kids, so my cousins, I took care of my cousins a lot growing up. And, um, I was the person in the family that they left the kids with me. And, well, I took care of them to the best of my ability as a young child. And they had to do what they had to do to survive and live a fulfilling life. And um, to go back to, jumping back to my childhood, um, my home life definitely wasn't the most healthiest. I did grow up with both my parents. Um, both of my parents were working when I was out of my mother's womb. And from what I've seen, they both are hardworking individuals who really taught us to work for the things that we really need and want in our life. And it shows in how we treat other people, how we present ourselves to others, and just let alone our actions. You can see it in how we hold ourselves. You can see it in how, you know, literally, just give me like an hour with you and you can see it. um, and they always taught us everything that comes is earned. It's never gifted. It's never um, given for free. The creator provides these things because you've earned it through the work that you've done. It doesn't mean that you've earned it through money. It just means you've earned it through modesty, through accountability, through peace, through love, through unification, the harmony of life. And it all states it in a lot of books. There's books out there that provide you those different kind of lessons to help you understand how you can regulate yourself, how you can manifest things in your life, how you can organize what's going on in your own personal self. And these are some tools that I've been able to gain just by reading. You know, it's as simple as reading the letters that you see right in front of your face. And also writing to yourself. That's also another way of, you know, grounding yourself as an individual. And me as a person that is standing here today, I obviously have a lot of knowledge through my educational background. People throughout my school, every institution that I've gone through has made it a great point that it's important to continue to read these books, to continue to listen to your teachers because they're providing you with some very important information. And it's in regards to the curriculum, to what's going on in today's times, to what's going on with your fellow classmates or peers around you, so that we can better support each other during those times, whether if it's physically or mentally and spiritually. And that's something that was taught to me in my community, because there has been always violence in our area. And I was the kid that walked with the group of kids. I was that kid that got jumped for being Mexican. I was that kid that got jumped or got into fights because I was being picked on, and I was defending myself by reacting. And you will see me, I may react to some things in ways where it's very unfiltered, and I hope people don't take it personally. And I never, ever, ever will get physical with somebody unless I have to defend myself. And my family history, well, obviously they come from Mexico. I do strongly believe on my mother's side there is a lot of indigenous practice that has been lost throughout time, because my family moved to the States, and because they're trying to assimilate themselves to a completely different culture, which is American culture. And it has been forgotten over time and over practice, because the older generation isn't there to teach us anymore. And I'm here to revitalize that in my family. And I'm going out to different community events and different forums and spaces where I feel like I do believe that's where my heritage comes from, or a sense of belonging for my culture, and finding people who welcome us in the form that we're coming in, with peace, love, accountability, respect, modesty, and unification, and recognition. We also want some recognition that, hey, we realize you're there, instead of treating us like we're the elephant in the room. Excuse me. But that's what I'm hoping for on this platform while we're creating these videos. I know I've jumbled back and forth between childhood and now a lot. I'm not so really great at putting a great timeline story frame well, like Jake
y'all gotta
did.
Remember, we're new to this. And I'm camera shy, and I think this whole world for both of us is just, it can be a little overwhelming, but we know that there are other people out there who share similar stories. We're looking for people like us, and vice versa. We're looking for people like that. I know they exist. I've always heard people talk about a lot of introverts don't meet each other when they could be great friends, and all it takes is one of them to put themselves out there in a position. And I think that's kind of what we're both doing here. So, excuse our shyness, but,
And our isms. Isms.
No lunches.
Sorry. I just had to let it out.
But, yeah, that's us, being ourselves and trying our best here to connect with other people. And I think that as we go through this, we're going to fine-tune everything more. I'm going to start learning more about video editing. Like, this is just really experimental right now.
Yep.
So, we're
bear
seeing
with
where
us.
It goes. Yeah,
bear with us.
Bear with us.
We're working on getting better with this techie stuff.
We also, I think, both can see a really cool future for what this can really become.
Yeah.
So, I'm not focused on numbers right now. I'm not focused on how big we get. It's about really finding the right people, the right audience. And
this
right
is
now,
the raw, unfiltered before we edit things.
Yeah.
So enjoy it while it lasts.
Yeah, this is all one take. We didn't even, last time we recorded the last video, I was tired as fuck. And we recorded that shit, and she was like, alright, posted. And I was like,
it's gonna happen again.
That's what's happening again. So,
I think this is where we're gonna end it.
I guess so.
We'll catch you guys next time, because it's pretty late for us. It's been a long day. And see ya next time, Mycelia Familia.
Deuces, y'all.